And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather Friday morning, IFR central interior with a band extending up across the Brooks Range there to the western Arctic coast, and another band eastward to the border. To the west, southwest, and south, we've got VFR here, and then marginal VFR for the morning hours around Kodiak Island, also with some VFR thrown in. IFR here just clipping Unalaska Island over to the south coast of the western Alaska Peninsula. A bunch of VFR out here over the Bering Sea, marginal VFR for the Aleutians and the Panhandle. Areas of IFR to the north and east, otherwise marginal VFR. And for the afternoon, some VFR here over the central and southern southeast coast. Also marginal VFR up into the Coast Range and Prince William Sound, into the Kenai Peninsula, and at least into eastern Turnagain Arm, and then for western Cook Inlet here, possibly in the Susitna Valley, and along and just south of the Alaska Range. And then VFR west of the mountains here across much of the southwest interior, up across Norton Sound, and a swath of marginal VFR here, St. Matthew Island, southeastward to the Alaska Peninsula with IFR there. For the Aleutian Range, on up into Kodiak Island with that next big system. And then for the Saturday morning time frame, IFR, North Gulf Coast into western Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, and also along the western slopes of the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range down to the Aleutian Range there. And also for the Alaska Peninsula, some IFR, marginal VFR, northern eastern Bering Sea, and VFR, Yukon Delta, St. Lawrence Island, most of the Seward Peninsula up into the northwest coast and the eastern Arctic coast, upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, VFR into the northern and northeastern Copper River Basin. Not too bad out over the Aleutians. And for Saturday afternoon, jumping ahead here, too early for Christmas Eve. And for we're looking at VFR here for the Aleutians until you get to the eastern Aleutian areas, and really not much change here over the northern and southeastern Bering Sea, marginal VFR. A little bit of IFR there in Bristol Bay, and also up in the Kuskokwim Valley there, and still along the Alaska Range to eastern Iliamna Lake area, Kamishak Bay. IFR for the North Gulf Coast, Valdez into western Prince William Sound, Portage, Whittier, those areas. North of the Alaska Range, pretty solid VFR, central interior eastward into Canada and northward to the eastern Arctic coast. Southeast coast, IFR, northern eastern sections, marginal VFR elsewhere into the Gulf of Alaska. Passes Anatuvik and Adigan, both looking like IFR, at least at times throughout the day on Friday. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR. Rainy, marginal VFR. Windy looking marginal as well, and Isabel marginal. Mintasta, though, optimistically going for a VFR day there, at least in part. And for Tanita, marginal VFR. Portage, marginal VFR, trending toward IFR later in the day. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR, trending toward marginal VFR. And the freezing levels here, 2,000 feet, now south of the Panhandle. And at the surface here, cutting right across the southeast coast, just off the North Gulf Coast, just east of Kodiak Island and south of the Alaska Peninsula, but north of all of the Aleutians. And for icing, that system coming in from the kind of moving northeastward here, moderate rime icing spreading across the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Bristol Bay, and Kodiak Island throughout the day. And for the jet stream, tomorrow, here's that next storm, still well south of the Alaska Peninsula, and the main jet here coming southwesterly and then northwest, about 105 knots across the central and southern southeast coast. And for 9,000 feet, 40 knot southeast winds creeping up to southern Kodiak Island, south-southwest 45 knots across south central Alaska. North winds starting out on the light side there for the Bering Strait, picking up to 45 knots as they blow across St. Matthew Island, as well as the Pribilofs down to the eastern Aleutians. And then an increase in the winds out over the far western Aleutians with that next system. And at 3,000 feet, northeast 45 knots, Alaska Peninsula, strongest winds band there just south of Kodiak Island, turning northeast 40 knots here down in toward the eastern Aleutian areas. light for the panhandle and starting to see an increase in the southeast winds spreading into the Prince William Sound area. And for turbulence, look for some possible considerable moderate turbulence, Copper River Basin, eastern Alaska Range, as well as Kamishak Bay here, and a more extensive area coming into Kodiak Island and extending across just about the entire Aleutian chain.